What's going on, guys? Sticks here from the Token Minorities, bringing you my first Sun and Moon deck video, and this deck is centered around none other than the card that I told you guys I was most excited about, and that is Umbreon-GX. Now, before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys liked this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and maybe subscribe. It really does help us out a lot and lets us do more for you guys. And as for the question of the day, honestly, words cannot describe how excited I am to be able to put this video out on the first day that Sun and Moon is available on TCGO. So my question of the day kind of revolves around that, and that is, did you guys get any particularly cool pulls from day one of Sun and Moon, either in real life or in the game? And if so, what did you guys get? Obviously, Umbreon-GX is the thing that I'm most excited about, and unfortunately, a lot of the codes that I've ordered have not come in yet, so I haven't gotten the chance to do any particularly big openings, but I was able to get my hands on a couple Umbreon-GX, so I'm really excited about that. But if you guys got anything particularly cool, let me know in the comments section down below, and yeah, tell me why you're so excited about it. But anyway, on to the deck, like I said, centered around Umbreon-GX. Why did I click off that? If I'm just going to go right back to it, 200 HP, so automatically very, very bulky, with 3 different attacks. The first attack is for 1 Darkness Energy and is Strafe, does 30 damage, and you may switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. So that's, I mean, it's a cool turn 1 attack, and especially with the Eevee that we're pairing it up with, the Energy Evolution Eevee, which came out in Sun and Moon as well, basically re-released. When you attach a basic energy card from your hand to this Pokemon during your turn, you may search your deck for a card that evolves from this Pokemon that is the same type as that energy card and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it, then shuffle your deck. So basically, that's just a long-winded explanation of saying if you play a Dark Energy onto Eevee, you can evolve it straight into an Umbreon. So that has a lot of synergy with the Strafe attack. So 1 for 30, not particularly good if it's on a stage 1, but the fact that you can get an Umbreon-GX first turn, meaning that you can do 30 damage turn 1. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's not horrible, and it's always nice to have 30 extra damage lying around, which is really what this deck is centered around. But the attack that we are actually focusing on is Shadow Bullet for a Darkness and a DCE. Does 90 damage, which, okay, that's fine. Like, 90 damage for 3 on a stage 1 is actually pretty mediocre. But the added effect is this attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now, those of you who have been around this game for a while see that and you go, oh my gosh, it is the rebirth of Darkrai. And yeah, that's what I thought. And also, if you didn't think that, well, oh well. But either way, Shadow Bullet, it really is just Night Spear with a more friendly attack cost. Instead of 2 Darkness and a Colorless, it's a Darkness and 2 Colorless, so you can power it up with 2 attachments. And it's really cool just spreading damage around, hitting something for 90 and something for 30, set it up to be knocked out later. And then, of course, the GX attack, Dark Call, for a Darkness and a Colorless. You can discard 2 energy cards attached to your opponent. That can be absolutely devastating late game. Now, don't get me wrong. In my opinion, Dark Call is one of the more mediocre GX attacks. So, I mean, it's not going to be an attack that you use every single game. But don't get me wrong. Dark Call can be incredible in the right situation. Like, if you have your opponent down to like a couple energy or something like that, you can Dark Call, just get rid of all that. And notice it doesn't say 2 basic energy, it just says 2 energy. So you can get rid of 2 DCEs that your opponent has on the field. You can get rid of like energy that your opponent has powered up on something on the bench while they're active, is just kind of stranded there. So Dark Call, while I don't think it's one of the most powerful GX attacks, it is still incredibly powerful in the right situation. So Umbreon really does have a lot going for it. I'm very, very, very excited to be doing it. And while I was trying to think of pairings for this card, luckily, Yveltal Garbodor is one of the most powerful decks in the meta, arguably the best deck. And I mean, with Sun and Moon, that's still yet to be determined. So I'm not saying it's the best deck right now, but it was before the release of Sun and Moon. And the fact that you already have the Fright Night Yveltal with Pitch Black Spear spreading around 60 and 60 with a Darkness and DCE. Umbreon was just a natural fit in this deck. Now, I just did a deck video about this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about all the Pokemon and all the cards that were involved in this list. So I just want to let you guys know that this list was adopted from Michael Pramawat's version of Yveltal Garbodor. I just got rid of a few cards to fit a 2-2 line of Eevee and Umbreon in there. So, I mean, it's really the jury's still out for me whether or not I think Umbreon helps this deck a lot. It does help a ton with the Jolteon matchup, as it gives it a stage 1 that can hit Jolteon. It can hit benches for like 30 to set up Shaymins for knockouts from Pitch Black Spear later, and also the fact that Shadow Bullet does 90 really just has some good math in some situations. Instead of just spreading 60 everywhere, spreading 90 and 30. So these two, really, it's just dependent upon what type of Pokemon you're up against, what type of deck you're up against, and whether or not you use Umbreon or Yveltal. But I think Umbreon actually does help this deck a lot. However, that is still yet to be determined. This metagame is like 1 day old, so well, not even 1 day old. This is the day that it's been released, so it has yet to be determined whether or not Umbreon-GX will help Yveltal Garbodor, or if it's just better off on their own. But I still think that this card is really, really cool and has a spot in this deck. As for the rest of the Pokemon, running 2 Shaymin because Shaymin is Shaymin and setup. Only running 2 because we are also running Garbodor that shuts off abilities. So having a Shaymin, having like a higher line of Shaymin means that I'm going to have a dead card later in the game, and there are other cards that I would rather have in this deck. And then 2-2 of Fright Knight Yveltal and Yveltal-EX, just matchup dependent. Which of these babies do you want to use? And then just Umbreon as the third Musketeer, third Stooge, whichever you want to call it. And then, of course, the Garbodor 2-2 line of Trubbish and Garbodor to shut off decks that rely on abilities. And this card really does win some matches by itself, and it helps. Oh, and it makes your opponent deal with crummy math. Like if you're attacking with just Umbreon and Yveltal, and your opponent has to knock out a Garbodor to get anything going, the fact that they have to focus on a 1-prize Pokemon and then take a bunch of 2-prize knockouts really does help you out a ton. And so yeah, Garbodor is obviously a natural pairing with Yveltal, so it's just natural that Garbodor would be a staple in a deck around Yveltal and Umbreon as well. As for the items, 2 Enhanced Hammer, Pramawat had it in there. I decided to leave it in there and not get rid of it, just because this helps out so much in the mirror match and other matchups that rely heavily on like DCEs, Double Dragons, stuff like that. So 2 Enhanced Hammers come in very handy and also are a nice discard fodder in matchups that you don't need them. 3 Max Elixir to help power up our Yveltals a lot faster, and you can actually use this to Max Elixir onto Eevee to get that powered up early. However, it is worth noting that it is better to attach a Darkness to Eevee from your hand than Max Elixir to it. Simply because, wow, voice crack, simply because if you play an energy from your hand onto Eevee, it can evolve into an Umbreon, while you cannot take advantage of energy evolution with the Max Elixir. We are also running 1 Super Rod to put some stuff back that we might have to discard earlier, get knocked out earlier, something along those lines. Like if you have to Sycamore away both of your Garbodor, you can put them right back in with Super Rod. 4 Trainers Mail to help with consistency, 4 Ultra Ball to help us get out all of our Pokemon. And one thing I do want to point out, you can run Nest Ball in this deck. Nest Ball is a phenomenal card that came out with Sun and Moon that lets you search for a basic Pokemon and put it on your bench. Guaranteed. As long as it's a basic Pokemon, there's no flip a coin or anything like that. You just grab a basic and put it onto your bench. I decided against putting those in the deck just because we rely on 2 lines of stage 1s. I thought that that would just be a little bit too inconsistent in Ultra Ball. While it does have the nasty discard drawback, it does help out a ton to just be like, you know what, I'm discarding, but I'm getting exactly what I want when I want. So you guys can try out Nest Ball in this deck. I still just prefer to use Ultra Ball. And then 4 VS Seeker to reuse all of our supporters. And one thing you might notice is I am leaning towards using secret rares now. I know I've become everything I hate. Well, not everything I necessarily hate, but I pulled a Harvey Dent. I did not die a hero, so I lived long enough to see myself become the villain. And honestly, Sun and Moon just came out with way too many cool secret rares for me not to jump on the bandwagon. So sorry all you guys that didn't like the secret rares. I'm starting to make my way over to them, and of course, I don't have a full set of the secret rare Ultra Ball yet. I don't know. Give me time. Give me time on that one. I will work on it, but it's the first day. Just give me a little bit of leniency on that one. But we are also running 2 Parallel City. That's what was in this deck originally, and I see absolutely zero reason to get rid of it. And then as for the supporters, I tinkered with the line a little bit. Pramawat did have the 4-2 of N and Sycamore for draw support, as well as the 2 Lysandre, but he had an Olympia instead of a Kukui, which I decided to put in. Now, okay, I'm going to be honest, if you want to run this deck competitively, keep Olympia in there over Kukui. I just decided that this card has a spot in this deck because you draw 2 cards, and then during this turn, your your attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon, so that has great synergy with Shadow Bullet, making it hit 110, which is able to one-shot a Shaymin, so that's why I decided to put a Kukui in there. But again, if you run this deck competitively, trust me, use Olympia. I just put Kukui in there, and no, why are we disconnected? So, anyway, I will finish that thought once I get right back to the deck. So yeah, sorry guys, be right back. And we're back. All right, back to what I was saying about Kukui. Olympia is 100% better in this deck. I just saw that this was a cool new card that had some kind of cool synergy with Umbreon, so I decided to throw it in there over Olympia. But this is 100% the new card effect. Use Olympia over Kukui. This was just kind of a cool card that I wanted to show off in this deck because it had some synergy with Umbreon's Shadow Bullet damage and whatnot. But anyway, on to the items. We were running 2 Fighting Fury Belt, only 2 of them because really only Yveltal-EX, I mean, yes, baby Yveltal to an extent when you have Garbodor up, but really only Yveltal-EX takes advantage of Fighting Fury Belt in every single matchup, so we want to run enough of them, that way we have them if we want them, but a low enough line to where we're not drawing them in matchups where we don't need them. 3 Float Stones, we're running a high line of Float Stones because we want to be able to retreat our Garbodors, and also all of our Pokemon really have unfriendly retreat costs. I mean, Umbreon has 2, both Yveltals have 2, Shaymin has 1, that's kind of friendly, but then Garbodor has the nasty 3. So we want to have a Float Stone whenever we need it, and we don't want to not have a Float Stone on something that needs a Float Stone, if that makes any sense. Basically, you want to have a Float Stone on everything that needs it. So that's what we're running, a heavy line of those. 4 DCE, because all of our Pokemon function on DCE, and then 8 Darkness Energy, kind of a high line. That way we can get Max Elixir to work when we need it, and also have just better odds of hitting it when we do decide to play it. So yeah, that is the deck, guys. I'm so ridiculously excited to try this out. Let's hope I don't run into any internet issues like I had just now, and let's go ahead and try to find a match with this deck. Alrighty, we have found one against Ampha Rob with looks like a Volcanion deck. I guess this guy's trying to take advantage of the fact that so many of the new cool decks, or there's been so many cool cards that release that support grass, and we start off with a decent hand. I mean, it's pretty good. Actually, I like my hand. So I have an Eevee and I have a Trubbish. That way I'll have a Trubbish turn 1, because as soon as I shut down my opponent's Volcanion, the sooner I win, and I'm not even bothering with waiting to see what my opponent's running. Okay, yeah, so we do start with that, and I'm not going to play the DCE because I do want to get an Umbreon up, and okay, I draw into some cool stuff, but let's see if I can get an Ultra Ball to get a Shaymin to draw some more cards, and oh boy, I don't get anything. So, really should have played that DCE, but this is unfortunate. However, it's not too horrible. I still will be able to evolve into an Umbreon next turn and get a Garbodor up turn 1, or turn 2, which, okay, the Garbodor, I think, getting up turn 2 will allow me to kind of move past, or, I don't know, what am I trying to say? I think the Garbodor up turn 2 will help buy me time to get set up despite the fact that I had such a slow start. My opponent just plays a single Volcanion and plays an energy on it. That is phenomenal for me. Well, not overly phenomenal because now I have to end my opponent, but what I am going to do, I'm getting that Garbodor up. I'm not playing any games with like N and stuff like that, or I'm not playing any games with hoping to draw into a Garbodor or something like that. I'm just going straight for it, and I still don't get an energy. That is kind of awful. But what I am going to do, Max Elixir onto the Eevee. I know I said you don't normally Max Elixir onto Eevee, but in this situation, I'm going to. And then I am just going to go ahead and Ultra Ball, probably grab a baby Yveltal just to hopefully try to get that thing set up so I can start like two-shotting Shaymins on the bench, spreading damage around to my opponent's Volcanion EXs and stuff like that. This is a matchup where I probably want to use baby Yveltal and Yveltal-EX more than Umbreon, but you know what? This is an Umbreon showcase. I'm just going to go with it. I am playing with Umbreon, and there is nothing you can do about it. Next turn, I will have a second Umbreon setup, and I'll be able to Sycamore away. Well, hopefully nothing. Hopefully I draw into like a Float Stone or something like that. That way I can play it onto my active Umbreon, evolve my Eevee into an Umbreon on the bench, and then draw into a DCE. That way I can start Night Spearing, even though I know it's Shadow Bullet. I'm going to be calling it Night Spear. I can guarantee you guys that just because I play so much with Darkrai decks in Expanded and Legacy. I'm going to be calling it Night Spear, so I figure I might as well not beat around the bush. Just go for a Night Spear. And okay, the fact that my opponent got rid of 2 supporters tells me that, yep, he either had a VS Seeker in his hand or a Sycamore. And, alright, my opponent gets a fresh hand. Good for him. I would have liked if my opponent was able to end me into a new hand, because while my hand isn't bad, 6 cards is almost always better than 2. Yes, I know that there are some situations where 6 cards is worse than 2, but wow, my opponent gets... Okay, my opponent gets a Baby Volcanion up. That is just fine. He will be able to get some damage onto my Umbreon started and then start powering up his Volcanion on the bench, be able to... Oh, my opponent decides to... Okay, I honestly think that Parallel City in a Volcanion deck is a very, very, very bad idea, because both sides hinder you tremendously. I don't understand exactly why my opponent is running a Parallel City in a Volcanion deck, because now the fact that I have a Garbodor up means that my opponent can't steam up at all, and the fact that my opponent played a Parallel City means that Power Heater actually won't be doing any damage to my Umbreon at all. So I highly disagree with that play. Actually, I highly disagree of including that in the deck, but either way, it's what we're playing against. My opponent does have a Volcanion EX completely powered up in the background, which is something I have to watch out for. Man, I'm going to go through 3 VS Seekers already in this game. This is bad. I do draw into some good stuff, though. I draw into some solid stuff. Wow. I draw into some solid stuff. I get a DCE that I can play onto this Umbreon. I will be able to Shadow Bullet immediately. Okay, please give me a... Wow, I don't get any way of getting a draw support for next turn. So, I mean, even if I had space on my bench, Garbodor shuts that off anyway, so I'm still not considering that necessarily a good thing that my opponent shut off my, or only gave me 3 bench spots. But either way, I am just going to go ahead and retreat into my Umbreon-GX and then go for a Shadow Bullet. Do I want to get it onto the Volcanion or the Shaymin? I think at this point I'm just going to start putting it on the Volcanion. That way, if I have to Shadow Bullet, it will be knocked out by a Pitch Black Spear later. So with this deck, you really have to think a lot. Well, not a lot. Well, I guess, yes, a lot of turns, but that is very grammatically incorrect. You have to think many turns ahead when using this deck, because you have to strategically place your damage so that you can get the maximum return from it, which is exactly what I'm trying to do right here. So each attack, instead of just attacking, you have to attack, then think about where you want the 30 damage to go or 60 damage to go. So a very heady, this is a very heady deck choice. Like, you have to put a lot of thought and strategy into your choice of decks. And one thing this deck is missing a lot is Choice Band, which will come out with the next set, which I think this deck will be a lot stronger with Choice Band. Just because, I mean, that extra 30 damage will help tremendously, especially after you're already spreading around 30 and 60 with Shadow Bullet and Pitch Black Spear. So what's amazing right here is that Garbodor is single-handedly keeping me in the game. My opponent has a great board setup, but the fact that my opponent can't steam up at all is keeping me in the game at this point. I mean, Garbodor is so incredibly valuable in this current meta, and I don't draw any supporters, so what I am going to do is just go ahead and Shadow Bullet again, take 1 prize, and then proceed to put some damage elsewhere. So my opponent will have 2 Volcanions powered up next turn. So, I mean, my opponent has a great start. My opponent has an absolutely phenomenal start. I have drawn... I mean, even though I've had a supporter in almost all of my turns, the fact that I haven't been able to really get anything... I haven't been able to string anything consistently with my supporters, so it's unfortunate, but yes, all decks run into this at some point. Adding a 2-2 line of a Stage 1 into Yveltal will make the deck 100%, well, not 100% more clunky. It will 100% definitely make the deck more clunky. That's what I was trying to say. So again, don't draw into anything. However, I still have an attachment for the turn, so I can just manually start powering things up. And then what I am going to do is... yeah, I'm definitely going to Shadow Bullet again. This Umbreon will get knocked out going into my opponent's next turn, but that is fine with me. I will have an Yveltal powered up. Ideally, I would have Lysandered in the Shaymin. That way I could have gotten 30 damage onto my opponent's Volcanion and then 90 onto the Shaymin, or some combination of those things. That way Pitch Black Spear can take knockouts exactly, like with exact damage. Either way, this is fine. Not Vaporeon, what am I? I combined Volcanion and Umbreon. Umbreon will go down to my opponent's benched Volcanion's Volcanic Heat this turn, so that's unfortunate, but you know what? I have an Yveltal, I have another Darkness Energy, I will have a Pitch Black Spear up next turn. My opponent decides to Escape Rope. That is phenomenal for me. I am just going to go into this Umbreon on the bench. Yes, it will take 110 damage, but, I mean, it allows me to have another Pitch Black Spear next turn, and why did my opponent go into Shaymin? Because now I'll be able to Shadow Bullet for 4 prizes next turn. So, I guess I honestly don't know what my opponent accomplished by going into the Shaymin, because that will just get rid of another energy. I mean, I guess, yeah, technically, well, no, I disagree with that play too, because you could have still energy retrievaled and then gone into your Volcanion that's on the bench, but I guess he didn't want, I don't know. I disagree with that play. I think that you wasted an attachment for the turn that you could have put onto your baby Volcanion or the other Volcanion EX on the bench. So, I mean, it might come back to bite my opponent. We'll see, but either way, he will be able to damage this Umbreon. Get a Fighting Fury Belt. Okay, that's fine. And see, yeah, my opponent could have taken a knockout this turn, but all he gets is just more damage, which really, I don't think will help necessarily in the long run. What I am going to do is hold on to the DCE just in case. Well, hold on to the DCE so I can play it onto this Umbreon later. Go into my Yveltal and then Pitch Black Spear. Deny my opponent a knockout next turn. Set the Shaymin up for a Shadow Bullet knockout later in the game, and then get 2 prizes. All right, there are all my supporters. My supporters were all in the prizes. So my opponent will not be able to take a knockout this turn unless he has a Lysandre. But either way, I'm forcing my opponent to use his supporter for the turn on a Lysandre as opposed to like a Sycamore or something like that if my opponent wants to take a prize. And I still have a Trubbish in my hand. I am not going to get rid of it just so I can get another Garbodor set up later in case, well, we see the Lysandre. What's my opponent going for? And yes, this is exactly why I decided not to get rid of the Trubbish. Just in case my opponent managed to knock out a Garbodor, I would be able to set up another Trubbish later. And yeah, I'm in a good spot. I think I'm in a good spot. My opponent did take 1 prize. I will send out this Yveltal, which now that Fright Night is back on, my opponent will have to manually retreat. But at this point, I will be able to play the DCE onto the Umbreon. And yeah, I have a Garbodor for next turn. I could Lysandre something in. Do I want to Lysandre the... So yeah, I'm obviously going to play the DCE, but I'm just thinking about, do I want to Lysandre or not, or do I just want to Pitch Black Spear? I think the play is Pitch Black Spearing. Because I could, yeah, I'm going to, and then I'm going to put the damage on my opponent's other Volcanion. Now, I could have put that on the Shaymin, that way it gets knocked out by a Shadow Bullet later, but honestly, I think the best play for me is to just leave my Yveltal up there, let it get knocked out, and then go for a Shaymin play. Actually, my opponent can't knock me out unless he has a combination of, like... He has to have a ridiculous combination of cards in order to be able to knock out this Yveltal. Now, I say this Yveltal because if he has, like, a... Well, okay, there's an Escape Rope. I said this Yveltal in case he had an Escape Rope, in which my opponent does, clearly. And what I am going to do is, do I want to sack the Trubbish or an Umbreon? I think I'm going to sack an Umbreon. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not even sacking an Umbreon because my opponent can't... Oh, I guess, okay, if he wants to attach and retreat again. Yeah, that's fine. My opponent is going to attach to the Shaymin, then retreat back into the Volcanion and take a prize on my Umbreon. But that's fine. That is completely fine with me. I actually... You know what? I already put damage on the Shaymin. Why did I say about putting the Shaymin at 90? But either way, the Shaymin is... I mean, the Shaymin is just a Shadow Bullet away from being 2 prizes. So I'm going to spread the damage around while I need it. Well, spread the damage around to where I need a knockout. Because I have 2 prizes. And, okay, my opponent is going to choose to knock out my Yveltal, which... I mean, that makes sense. That's a good play. be able to... Okay, my opponent just played a Hoopa for nothing. That could be a liability later. In fact, I kind of want to Lysandre that thing up and then Shadow Bullet it twice for the game. But either way, my Yveltal will go down this turn to a Fighting Fury Belt boosted Volcanic Heat. My opponent's just going to steam up for no reason. I don't really get that play. I think you would want to have as many energy as you can, especially when you have the knockout on the board right now. And because of my opponent's Escape Rope, that's two... Well, there's 2 turns of attachments that my opponent did not use. And what I am going to do, send in the Umbreon, go ahead and play the energy onto... Well, I mean, obviously this Umbreon. Play the energy onto it. I think the play is to play the energy onto this guy, play the Yveltal down. Yeah, play the Yveltal down, that way I can put a DCE on it later. Ultra Ball into a Garbodor. Hold on, what do I want to do? Do I want to get rid of the Lysandre, or do I want to Lysandre and then Sycamore next turn? So, I actually think the play is to get rid of the DCE and the Ultra Ball, that way I have the Lysandre and the Sycamore. Grab a Garbodor so that my opponent has to target that thing down. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and evolve. I think that's the right play. My opponent definitely could Lysandre that thing in, and especially because I don't have a Float Stone on it, it could be a liability. But what I think the right play is to bring up my opponent's clean Shaymin. Yes, and then Shadow Bullet this guy and knock out my opponent's Shaymin on the bench. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Knock out my opponent's Shaymin on the bench, take 2 prizes, leave this Shaymin only a Shadow Bullet away from being knocked out. And that way, I mean, even if my opponent knocks out one of my Umbreons, all I have to do is just Shadow Bullet with the other onto the bench Shaymin and win the game. So yeah, that is 100% the play. I think I'm in a phenomenal position. I mean, yeah, my opponent could Lysandre in my Garbodor, which all I would need to do is just draw into my 3rd Float Stone, which kind of a low deck size at this point. But okay, that looks... Ah, crud. That looks like exactly what my opponent is going to do. Bring in the Garbodor. And this is a bad situation. On the bright side, I can still use a Shaymin to draw more cards if I need to. What I can do... Well, what I'm going to first do is Max Elixir with it. And if I draw it into my Float Stone, I win the game. I have to Sycamore. I don't have a random Skyla that I forgot about, even though I know I didn't have one. Alright. Trainers Mail. See what you can get me. Give me something good. Nothing. I get another Parallel City. Well, that's unfortunate. But what I can do is go ahead and play the energy onto the Garbodor. That way, if I draw into a DCE next turn, I can at least have that going for me. And then I'm not going to play the Parallel City. Even though I probably should have. But, I don't know. I think I want to save the Parallel City for putting me down to a lower bench size, like when I have to play a Shaymin or something like that. I want to be able to Parallel City myself down to 3 cards, or to 3 bench spots. That way I can get rid of the Shaymin and whatever else. And you know what? I draw into a Trainer's Mail. That is fine with me. Let's see what I can get. Draw a Sycamore. That is beautiful. If I can draw into... Okay, I need a Float Stone. Oh, there we go. Draw into it. So that's beautiful. What I am going to do, play the Fighting Fury Belt onto the Yveltal, just because, I mean, that guy is... I don't know. I have a feeling that this game is going to come down to Yveltal. Even though Umbreon's been putting the team on its back, I really feel like this game is going to come down to Yveltal. I'm not going to play the Float Stone onto Garbodor, then play the Shaymin. That'd be a very stupid mistake. I'm going to Shaymin first, then Garbodor. That is exactly why, because I do have a Parallel City. Now what I can do is go ahead and turn it towards me. That way my opponent's attacks do less damage, and I'm able to get rid of the Shaymin and the Yveltal, and then play the Float Stone onto Garbodor, shut down my opponent's Steam Ups, retreat into my Umbreon, and then go ahead and Shadow Bullet. Let's see, Shadow Bullet, do I want to put it... I definitely want to put it on the Volcanion. That has more energy onto it. That way I just need less damage. I just need less damage in order to take it out. My opponent will be able to take a knockout on my Umbreon this turn. Actually, he can take a knockout on either Umbreon or the Garbodor, but this way I'm forcing my opponent to choose what he wants to target down. And either way, I think I have the win. Also, this way, if my opponent wants to take the knockout on the Garbodor and me, he has to do that, but he apparently does not have a Lysandre or an N, or just didn't want to play the Lysandre. Takes the knockout on the Umbreon. I will be able to send in my Yveltal right now, attach a regular Darkness Energy to it, and Yveltal comes through in the end. Evil Ball coming through. I literally said come through like twice. But Evil Ball is able to take the victory, and this was a really, really cool match because you saw literally every facet of the deck working the way it's supposed to. Umbreon spreading damage around the way it's supposed to, getting good math on Shaymin's baby Yveltal, spreading 60 and 60, big Yveltal, cleaning up the game, and then Garbodor just being the MVP, shutting down all of my opponent's abilities throughout the majority of the game and making it a focal point as opposed to an Umbreon or an Yveltal, so those guys are still free to attack. So very, very fun deck to use. I think Umbreon really does help this deck, but whether or not it helps it to a competitive level has yet to be seen. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and more than that, I hope you're enjoying the release of Sun and Moon. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Leave your answer to the question of the day in the comment section below. I would love to hear what you guys polled on day 1 on Sun and Moon. And as always, this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.